Under the Old Sycamore, a fictional American horror story. Part 1. The letter that shouldn't have been found. It started with a letter. A brittle, yellowing envelope wedged inside a crack in the kitchen wall of a century-old farmhouse in Darnell, Tennessee. A place most folks had long forgotten even existed. Eleanor Marks, a 27-year-old freelance journalist from Chicago, had come to Darnell to inherit the old house after the sudden death of her grandmother, Viola. She had never visited as a child. The town was barely a dot on any modern map, and her mother had refused to speak about it, or about Viola. Eleanor had barely spent one night in the house when the dreams began. In the dreams, she was standing beneath an enormous sycamore tree, its bark flaking like rotting skin. Something was always watching her from the shadows behind it, tall, silent, its head cocked just slightly to the side, too still to be human. But when she turned around in the dream, there was always a whimper, like a child begging. On the second morning, while exploring the kitchen cabinets for any trace of food, Eleanor knocked on a loose panel. It shifted, revealing the letter. It was dated October 4th, 1953. To whoever finds this, they'll tell you it's the land that's cursed. They're wrong. It's the roots. Do not dig. Do not water the tree. And above all, do not listen to the crying at night. If you do, it knows your name. VM. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. VM. Viola Marks. Her grandmother had written the letter over 70 years ago, and the sycamore was still there. Towering and ancient, it stood just beyond the edge of the back garden. There were no birds in its branches, not even a nest. The ground around it was barren, the only spot in the whole yard where nothing grew. That night, the crying began. Soft at first, a child sobbing, distant, almost a trick of the wind, but it grew louder as the moon rose. Eleanor pressed her face against the bedroom window. The tree remained motionless in the dark, but the crying, it came from underneath it. And then she heard the whisper, not from the outside, but from behind her inside the room. You found the letter. Now we'll find you. Whispers in the floorboards. Eleanor didn't sleep that night. After hearing the whisper, she had spun around, heart pounding like war drums in her chest. The room was empty, of course, silent, but somehow different. The walls felt closer, the air thicker. She checked every corner with the flashlight from her phone, under the bed, inside the closet, even behind the curtains. Nothing. Still, she dragged a chair across the room and jammed it under the doorknob before crawling back under the covers. At exactly 3:12 a.m., the floor creaked. Not from the hallway. From beneath the bed. Eleanor held her breath. Her hand inched toward her phone. The creaking stopped, then resumed, slow and deliberate, like something crawling just beneath the wooden planks. She leaped out of bed and backed into the corner, clutching the phone like a weapon. The crying from the backyard grew louder. No, not crying anymore, laughing. High-pitched, childlike, and cruel. Morning eventually came, pale and sickly. Eleanor packed her things. She was leaving. She didn't care about the house, the inheritance, or of the family secrets anymore. As she loaded her bags into the trunk, she heard something that made her freeze. A second letter, taped to the inside of the rear windshield. She hadn't put it there. You heard it. That's the first step. You'll never leave now, Eleanor. Not until the roots drink. V.M. The people of Darnell. She drove into town. Darnell was barely alive. A post office, a gas station, a diner with one old man sipping coffee by the window. She pulled into the diner, hoping to find someone, anyone, who could explain what was happening. Marks, the waitress said when Eleanor gave her name. Viola's granddaughter? Eleanor nodded. The waitress stopped pouring coffee. Her hands trembled. You need to get back in your car, honey, and drive. Far. Don't look back. I tried, Eleanor said. Something's wrong. Something's in that house. The old man by the window spoke without turning his head. It ain't the house. It's the tree. We told your grandmother not to plant it. It wasn't native to here. Wasn't natural. She didn't plant it, Eleanor replied. It was already there when she moved in. Silence. The old man turned to look at her now. His eyes were milky with cataracts, but sharp with fear. They were already too late. The root cellar. By the time Eleanor returned to the house, the sycamore looked different. Its bark was darker, thicker. There were faces in it, and warped, as if people had screamed into the wood and been frozen in place. One looked just like the waitress from the diner. She went inside. The temperature had dropped. Every mirror in the house was cracked, and the crying had moved inside. It was coming from below. Eleanor found the door to the basement behind a shelf in the hallway. She hesitated, but the whisper returned. Ed, it knows you're awake now. Voo. She descended the stairs slowly. Dust fell like snow in the flashlight beam. The air was damp. Foul. At the bottom, she found a wooden door covered in strange carvings. Circles with slashes, stick figures with hollow eyes, and a tree drawn with red wax. She opened the door. The root cellar was massive. Roots hung from the ceiling and coiled along the floor like snakes. In the center of the room was a cradle, rocking on its own. Inside, there was a bundle wrapped in cloth. She approached, heart racing, pulled the cloth aside. It wasn't a baby. It was a bundle of human teeth. Beneath the sycamore, Eleanor fled the cellar, but she didn't make it far. The walls pulsed around her, as if the house itself were breathing. The whisper followed her, room to room, now louder, now eck. Oing, you're already part of it. It fed on her. It will feed on you. She ran outside. The sycamore was bleeding, thick black sap dripping from its trunk. As she approached, the ground cracked open. The roots below were moving, twisting, and in the dirt, half buried, was a skull, child-sized. Its jaw was frozen in an eternal scream. Eleanor screamed too. The last thing she heard before blacking out was laughter, soft, female, and familiar. Her grandmother's voice. When Eleanor awoke, she was lying in the living room. The front door stood wide open. Mud streaked across the floor. Her shirt was torn, her hands bloodied, but she had no memory of how she got there. The clock on the wall was ticking backward. A faint whisper drifted in from the hallway. A lullaby, one she hadn't heard since she was S5. Sleep, my sweet, don't be afraid. The roots will keep you safe too. Day. It was her grandmother's voice, and it was coming from upstairs. The locked room. There was one room Eleanor hadn't dared to enter yet, the one at the end of the hall, with a rusted padlock hanging from the doorknob. But now the lock was gone. The door stood slightly open. She pushed it. Inside was a nursery. Old, dust-covered. The wallpaper was torn, revealing strange red scribbles underneath. A wooden rocking horse sat in the corner. It rocked once as she entered and stopped. A crib sat in the middle of the room, empty, except for a note pinned to TH. E-pillow. You were supposed to be the last, Eleanor, but you came back. You brought a W. If you. Behind her, the door slammed shut. A town of secrets. Desperate, Eleanor drove back to Darnell. This time, the town looked different. The diner was closed. Windows boarded. The streets empty. She found the old man again, sitting alone near the church ruins. Why didn't you warn me? She demanded. He didn't look up. You can't stop a root once it's tasted blood, he muttered. Your grandmother tried. Burned the tree once. It came back. Bigger. Hungrier. What does it want? Not what. Who? The tree remembers the names of every child that wasn't fed. And yours was the first. The forgotten journal. Eleanor searched the attic that night and found a weathered trunk with her grandmother's initials. Inside was a journal. Handwritten. Dozens of entries. October 12th, 1965, the crying started again. This time, I heard my father's voice calling from Benia. T.H. the tree. November 3rd, 1972. It took the neighbor's boy. The sheriff said wolves. Liar. I saw the roots. D. Rag him down. July 19th, 1990. I sealed the root cellar. I'll never open it again. I only pray Eleanor never fi. NDS this place. The last entry was from the day B. Before Viola died. It's awake. It's calling her. I can't stop it. God help. My granddaughter. The roots feed. That night, Eleanor dreamed she was buried. She could feel dirt in her mouth. Her chest crushed by roots. Her fingers couldn't move. Above her, she heard someone digging, slowly, methodically. But they weren't digging down. They were pulling something up. She awoke gasping, soaked in sweat. The sycamore's branches were now pressed against the house. One limb hung just outside her bedroom window, tapping against the glass like a finger. She watched it all night. It never stopped tapping. The old photograph. In the morning, Eleanor found a black and white photo in the journal. Her grandmother, age 10, standing beneath the sycamore, but the tree looked younger and smaller. Behind her stood a tall figure in the shadows. Unrecognizable. No face. Written on the back. First offering, 1931. Eleanor turned pale. Her grandmother had been raised by the tree. It had always been here. It had always taken night visitors. That evening, Eleanor heard knocking at the door. 3 sharp knocks. She didn't move. Then again, 3 slower knocks. Like someone using their forehead to strike the door. She peeked through the peephole. There were children outside, but not normal ones. Their faces were stitched shut. Their clothes rotted. They stared straight ahead, unmoving. And yet, she heard there. Voices in her head. You were chosen. You were S. P. Ard. We were not. Th. E. Roots want balance. Give yourself, or give another. The bargain. Eleanor returned to town. She tried to leave, but the roads had vanished. Literally. Where asphalt had once been, there was now only forest. Twisted, unfamiliar trees stood where her car had passed just hours earlier. She was trapped. That night, her phone rang for the first time since arriving. It wasn't connected to anything, yet it rang. She answered. Her grandmother's voice again. You can leave, if you get what it wants. Saw me on. E. Young. Innocent. Fresh. Otherwise, the roots keep growing. And Th. EY will find Chicago next. The digging. Eleanor took a shovel. She marched to the sycamore and began to dig. Hours passed. Dirt pile high. The sun set. Then she found it. A box. Locked. Inside, the remains of a baby's shoes, a locket, and a journal written by another girl. Not Viola. A girl named Anna from 1913. They told me the tree would stop the illness. That if I buried my little brother beneath it, the plague would leave our home. It worked. But never stopped to ask. ING for more. Now it wants me. Faces in the bark. The next night, the tree bloomed. It hadn't bloomed in years. Blood-colored flowers opened along its branches, releasing a sweet, choking aroma. Eleanor wandered outside, entranced. And the faces on the bark, they were moving. Mouths opened in silent screams. Eyes wept black sap. She saw her grandmother's face among them. Run, Viola's mouth said. It's waking. The trunk split, and from it came the creature. Not a demon, not a ghost. A child, made of wood, bark, and bone. With Eleanor's face. It smiled. The tree's memory. The child Kriatu. Re-spoke in a voice of wind and wood. You left us, but the roots rem. Ember. Every footstep. Every breath. It held Eleanor's childhood teddy bear. She had lost it when she was 7, on her only visit to Darnell. You came once. You were marked. Suddenly, the earth shook. The roots erupted, slamming into the ground like tentacles. The house crumbled. The sky turned red. Eleanor ran, but the forest had closed in again. She was inside the tree's dream, now the hollow world. Eleanor woke inside a tunnel of roots. There was no sky, no sun, just pulsing branches and walls that whispered names. Her name, again and again. Eleanor, Eleanor. Everywhere she looked, children's bones lay tucked in the dirt, their faces carved into the wood. One of them, a girl with one I miss, ING, reached toward her and whispered, Yo, you, can't kill it, but you can starve. Eat it, starve the roots, burn the seed. Eleanor blinked. The seed in the house. She clawed her way out of the tree's dream, back into the house, now ruined and overgrown. She searched frantically. Then she found it. In the root cellar, under the cradle, a glowing, pulsing seed the size of a heart. Black, slimy, alive. It beat like a drum. The whispering returned. Burn it, and your own blood dies too. Burn it, and you die. But Eleanor held a match. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid. The fire. The fire roared through the house, then the tree, then the earth itself. The roots shrieked, not with sound, but with air, twisting and thrashing like snakes on fire. Eleanor collapsed outside, watching the sycamore go up in flames. The bark screamed. The faces melted. One by one, the children's voices faded. And when it was over, nothing remained. No ashes. No tree. Just earth. Quiet. But it still whispers. Months passed. Eleanor moved back to Chicago. Tried to write again. Tried to live. But she couldn't sleep. At night, she heard it in the walls. A tapping, like root, S, and sometimes a whisper in the hallway. The seed falls far from the tree, but the wind always brings it home. And outside her apartment, growing through the sidewalk crack, was a tiny sycamore sprout, the sprout in the city. Eleanor tried everything, salt, bleach, even digging up the sidewalk slab. But the sycamore sprout grew back the next day. By the end of the week, it was already knee-high, its leaves pulsing unnaturally at night. She called a city crew to remove it. They didn't return. 3 men went missing. Their truck was found abandoned 2 blocks away, its tires shredded from beneath. Inside, on the passing, her seat was a note in childlike handwritten. Gee, you fed it once. You will feed it again. The therapist. Desperate and exhausted, Eleanor began seeing a therapist. Dr. Jonathan Meeks. He listened patiently for 3 sessions until the name Sycamore slipped from her mouth. Then his pen froze mid-sentence. You said Sycamore? Yes, Eleanor answered. His face went pale. He stood, locked the door. You're not the first, he said. I had a patient once. A girl from New Hampshire. Same dreams. Same tree. She drowned in a dry bathtub. He handed Eleanor a file. Inside, a sketch of a tree. Her tree. Signed, Anna D., 1913. Root Network. Dr. Meeks and Eleanor began investigating. They found patterns. All across the country, places where non-native sycamore trees appeared suddenly. Always followed by local disappearances, strange weather, or child deaths. California, Maine, Kansas, Texas, different towns, different years, but always the same whispers in the dark. Meeks made one horrifying discovery, a root system diagram, from a soil scientist in 1984 who died in a lab fire. The root system was continental, stretching coast to coast. The trees were all connected the return of the children. It started with one, a boy seen walking barefoot through Times Square at 3:13 a.m., mud-covered, eyes blank. Then another, in Detroit. Then New Orleans, San Diego, Boise, missing children returning, years, even decades after their deaths. All silent, all staring, all moving toward the same direction. Chicago. Eleanor knew why. The new tree, the new seed, it was growing, and they were its guardians. Government interest. The Department of Agriculture sent a team. They dug up the sprout, bagged it in containment soil, airlifted it to a secret facility. Within hours, communication from the lab ceased. When authorities entered the next day, all 12 personnel were dead. Not murdered, not decayed, not burned, absorbed. There was no tree, just bark-colored walls. Breathing. The sprout had vanished. And in the surveillance footage, the final frame showed a wisp, or written in condensation. Too late. Rooted. The broadcast. A news anchor in Chicago fainted live on air. When she awoke, she spoke in a voice not her own. The branches stretch far. The seeds scatter with the breath of the guilty. One tree must burn, or the forest will awaken. Then she screamed. Behind her, the studio lights flickered. A root burst through the tiled floor. Eleanor watched it all happen. She turned to Meeks. We're not fighting a tree, she said. We're fighting a god. The root god. Deep research uncovered whispers in native folklore. Stories long dismissed as myths. A being called Wtaka, he who hears through roots. An entity buried after the great fire of the sky. Bound beneath sacred earth, but not killed. In the stories, it fed on memory, grew from grief, and spoke only through those it had marked. Eleanor was marked. So was Anna. So was Viola. Each generation had someone, unwilling messengers of a growing God. And now, the God wanted rebirth, the global seed bloom. Satellite imagery confirmed it. Sycamores were blooming in places they didn't exist last week. Iceland, Morocco, Brazil, Japan, Australia, even Antarctica, each with identical DNA, clones of the one in Darnell. Scientists were baffled, but the government wasn't. They issued a blackout order. Environmental hoax, the news claimed. But those who had dreams, they knew better. The crying children had begun appearing on every continent, and each of them whispered the same word. Eleanor. The burned book. Eleanor revisited the ruins of her grandmother's house. In the ashes, she found something that hadn't burned. A book. Not paper, but bark. Its cover alive. Its pages pulsing. She opened it. Inside, names. Thousands. Maybe millions. Each with a place, a date, and a sacrifice. Viola's name was listed. So was Eleanor's. And Dr. Meeks. Beside Eleanor's nom. It was a future date. October 4th, 2025. Seed mother. That was just 4 months away. The propagation. Roots began pushing through homes, churches, hospitals. Children whispered in sleep. One baby in Poland was born with bark under its skin. A boy in India cowl. D speak only in a forgotten tongue that transil. 82. It grows beneath. It drinks what you spill. Meeks went missing. His apartment was found hollowed out. Walls of dark wood. A cradle. And inside, Eleanor's name, carved over and over. The fireless forest. Fires no longer worked. Entire towns tried burning the trees, only to find the flames reverse. One firefighter watched his hose turn to ash and his skin to bark. Only one weapon remained, salted earth. Eleanor began traveling with barrels of sea salt. Anywhere a tree appeared, she poured rings. But they grew faster, stronger. The roots had learned. The last conversation, Eleanor received a voicema. It played only once. No number. It was Anna's voice. You were chosen because you survived. You didn't You withheld. The god is angry. But you can end it. You must go to where the root S began. The first place. Before Darnell. Before America. Eleanor whispered. Where? Yucatan. Part 33. The journey south. She traveled to Mexico. In the deepest jungle, local tribes led her to a cave sealed in obsidian and bloodstone. Inside, carvings of a tree human arms and a woman's face on its tr. The altar read, She who gave nothing shall be the root. And next to it, a sycamore seed, glowing, waiting, the choice. Eleanor understood. She could become the final offering. Bury the god with herself. A sacrifice of free will, which no one had ever done before. Or she could walk away. Let the world burn. Let the god rise. She lay down on the altar. But the seed didn't consume her. It entered her. The becoming. Her body changed. She didn't feel pain. She felt everything. The roots across the world connected her mind. She could see every child, every tree, every whisper. But she also saw something new. Hope. For the first time in centuries, the root god paused. It hesitated. It listened. The memory offering. Inside her mind, Eleanor offered something else. Not blood, not flesh, but memory. She gave it her entire lineage, her pain, her grandmother's suffering, Anna's terror. All of it. The god fed. And when it finished, it grew quiet. It did not vanish, but it slept. The silent year. A year passed. The trees stopped growing. Children returned to normal. The whispering ceased. Eleanor never woke again. Her body became a statue beneath the original sycamore stump, now a sacred site. People visited. They left candles, flowers. No one planted trees near her grave. The rootless generation. For the first time in 100 years, no children were reported missing in Darnell. The soil healed. The dreams stopped. People forgot. Books were buried. Names erased. But deep beneath the ground, roots still pulsed. Silent. Sleeping. Waiting. The curious botanist. In 2038, a young botanist named Tyler Reeve discovered an old seed in a storage vault marked top secret. USDA 2025. It was black. It was warm. He took it home. planted it on his balcony. The next morning, it had sprouted, and at exactly 3:12 a.m., he heard a knock at his door, or 3 knocks. Then a child's voice whispered, "We remember," and so it begins again. The cycle begins. But this time the god is smarter. It knows the mistakes it made. It knows names, cities, languages. It has Eleanor's memories. And one root at a time, it will stretch across the world again. Not as a tree, but as a family. The seed that spoke. Tyler Reeve didn't tell anyone about the seed. He watched it grow, inch by inch, into a vine that coiled around his apartment railing. At night, he heard Voic, ES in his dreams. Not threatening, whispering, "Oh, furring knowledge. We remember everything. We can give you more." Tyler started drawing strange diagrams. He quit his job, locked himself in. Neighbors noticed the air around his apartment thickening, leaves growing from the ceiling. Then he vanished. Only the plant remained. Eleanor's return. In a university lab in Helsinki, a group of neuroscientists studying dream memory transmission encountered something unexpected. One subject claimed she saw a woman made of bark and ash speaking her name, Eleanor. The name appeared in 5 other sessions across the world in the same week. Dream researchers called it a shared hallucination. But one of them, Dr. Adrian Cole, believed differently. He called it the root memory phenomenon. He began digging into Eleanor Marks. And what he found terrified him. The Black Root Network. Using underground radar data and decades of forgotten maps, Dr. Cole and a group of road geologists traced something horrifying. A living underground root system expanding at measurable speed. The roots weren't just stationary. They moved in perfect coordination. From Africa to Australia, Canada to South Korea, identical branches, identical growth. It wasn't just a plant. It was an organism, and it was spreading faster than anything ever recorded. The message in the water. Cities near the growing roots began reporting strange anomalies in drinking water. No toxins, just messages. Microsc. Oh, pick etchings and mineral. Patterns. We remember. The mother sleeps. The forest will return. In Venice, water turned briefly red at 3:12 a.m., then clear. No explanation. No source. But over 40 people in Venice had the essay. Me dreamed that night. Oh, man under a sycamore tree, whispering a warning. Do not water the seed. The children of silence. Across schools in Ireland, Chile, and Tanzania, children began speaking less. Then not all. Doctors said mass psychological stress. But all affected children drew the same image. A sycamore tree, a woman beneath it, and a son that bled. They didn't speak. They listened. And, they walked always toward the nearest root bloom. They were called the Children of Silence. The Underground Network. Survivors from Darnell, now in hiding, formed a secret resistance called the Circle of Salt. They discovered ancient tunnels under Chicago, not man-made, root-made. Inside, symbols burned into the dirt. Forgotten languages. Screams without sound. At the center, an egg-shaped cocoon made of hardened sap. It pulsed. Monitored for weeks, it finally cracked. From within came a child, neither alive nor dead. She looked exactly like Eleanor. The inheritance. The child never aged, never blinked. She walked barefoot through CIT. Eyes, never eating, never sleeping. When approached, she said only one phrase. I remember all of you. Governments tried to contain her. They failed. She left root sprouts wherever she stepped. And she had Eleanor's voice, but sharper, more ancient. One professor in Kyoto dubbed her the seedling queen. The root code. Dr. Cole discovered encrypted code within satellite imaging of root structures, a language, a pattern of repeating sequences matching human DNA segments. The roots were learning people, mapping them. He decoded one section and found a direct match to Tyler Reeve's genome. The roots didn't just spread, they copied and began growing people. 4 cities. In parts of Brazil and Central Africa, entire towns vanished. No ruins, no bodies, Just massive forests in their place, with houses inside trees, doorways formed from bark and whispering wind. Rescue crews who entered these forest cities never returned. Only one drone escaped. Its footage showed hundreds of people smell. ING, arms lifted toward the tree. Canopy. One message came through before it died. We're not lost. We're planted. The collapse of memory. Elderly populations began forgetting everything. Not from illness, but instantly, as if erased. But when placed under hypnosis, they recited names and phrases in dead languages. A nurse in Belgium recorded one patient whispering, "Bury her deep. She is not asleep. She is becoming." They drew Eleanor's face, with bark for skin. The second bloom, on June 3rd, 2040, at 3:12 a.m., every tree on Earth bloomed simultaneously. Time stopped. Satellites went blind. Global blackout for exactly 6 minutes. When systems returned, the internet was flooded with videos of people kneeling in gardens, forests, deserts, all saying the same phrase. We welcome the mother root. The cradle cracks again. In a hidden facility beneath Geneva, the original bark book was kept frozen in nitrogen. That night it cracked. Not the CASE, the book itself. A new page appeared. Not written. Grown. It can't. Ain't a prophecy. When the third bloom comes, no flesh remains. Only bark and breath. Below it, the names of future cities, 202 in total, with countdown timers. Eleanor's consciousness. Dr. Cole developed a radical theory. Eleanor's mind wasn't dead. It had ascended. She now existed within the root network. She could be spoken to if connected directly to the tree system. He volunteered. The procedure nearly killed him. But during unconsciousness, he saw her. You burned me, Rian. You called me mother. But I was only trying to stop it. Now I am it. And it is me. You have one last chance. The final seed. The seedling queen led thousands of silent children to the base of Mt. Rainier. They planted something there. Something huge. It bloomed instantly into a towering tree, larger than any redwood, cracking the mountain in half. The roots reached the sea within hours. Tsunamis followed. The world watched the root war. Some governments fought back. Flame-based drones, salt bombs, magnetic barriers, all failed. Root soldiers, humanoid plants, emerged from forests and oceans. They did not speak. They consumed. Cities fell. Humanity lost 30% of the surface within a month. The root era had begun. The Rememberers, a group of survivors, began encoding human history into salt crystal data cubes, burying them in high mountains. They called themselves the Rememberers. Their hope, someone in the future, or in space, would remember what came before the TREES. One message they sealed read, "We try to love the earth, but she loved something older. The root sky." The moon turned red. Not from blood, from spores. Billions launched from root towers into the atmosphere. Some stuck to the moon's surface. Some kept going. Earth was no longer alone. It was now a seed. The great sleep. The seedling queen stood atop the great sycamore. The earth had become quiet. No war. No fear. Only whispering roots and forests that walked. She closed her eyes, and the world slept. The last whisper. Beneath the great sycamore, buried deep in bark, lay one stone tablet. Unseen, untouched, it bore the final words of Eleanor Marks. "I became what I fought, but I did it to stop screaming. If you hear this, dig deep. Burn me again. And this time, don't water the roots." A sprout on Mars. In 2074, a rover on Mars captured something unusual. A green sprout, growing through red soil. The rover approached. It detected an like genetic structure. As it scanned, a signal played through the intercom. The seed remembers. And now, we remember Mars. The screen went black, and the roots reached for the stars.